There is one belief atheism almost never says out loud. Not belief in a church, scripture, prayer, miracles, or a personal God watching over the world. It is quieter than that, and in some ways it is heavier. Atheism has to believe that reality can simply be here. It has to believe that somewhere underneath matter, energy, laws, space, time, consciousness, reason, morality, beauty, and the strange fact that anything exists at all, there is no deeper intention, no final mind, no necessary source, no one from whom being itself comes. And the question is not whether an atheist can be intelligent, honest, kind, or serious. Of course he can. The question is whether atheism has really escaped faith or whether it has only moved faith into a darker corner and renamed it neutrality. Because once you ask why there is something rather than nothing, the ground begins to shake. If this kind of calm Christian reflection helps you think more clearly about God, faith, and the deeper questions behind life, subscribe to Quiet Grace Daily. And if this video gives you one sentence worth remembering, like it, share it with someone who thinks about these questions, and leave a comment with the part you want me to go deeper on next. So in this video, I want to make one careful argument. Atheism can describe many things inside the universe. It can talk about particles, forces, evolution, cosmology, and natural law. But description is not the same as ultimate explanation. And when atheism refuses God, it still has to trust something else at the bottom of reality. Start with the ordinary world, because the argument does not begin in a cloud of religious emotion. It begins with things you already know. You did not give yourself existence. Your parents did not give themselves existence. The earth did not give itself existence. The stars did not give themselves existence. Every object you touch, every body you see, every system scientists study, exists in a borrowed way. It could have failed to exist. It could have been different. It depends on conditions outside itself. That is what philosophers mean when they talk about contingency. A contingent thing is real, but it is not self-explanatory. A tree is real, but the tree depends on soil, water, sunlight, seed, time, chemistry, and a whole web of conditions it did not create. A human life is real, but it depends on biology, history, parents, air, food, language, and a world already waiting there. Now extend that insight. The universe is full of dependent things. It is not enough to point to one dependent thing and say it came from another dependent thing. That can be true locally, but it does not answer the deeper question. If a lamp is lit by another lamp, and that lamp is lit by another lamp, and that lamp is lit by another lamp, you have explained the transfer of flame for a while. But you have not explained why there is fire in the series at all. A chain of borrowed light cannot be the final explanation for light unless somewhere there is a source that does not borrow. This is the part many modern conversations blur. People hear the first cause argument and answer, well, what caused God? But that objection misunderstands the claim. The claim is not that everything needs a cause. The claim is that things that begin, depend, change, receive, borrow, or exist contingently need an explanation outside themselves. God, in the classical Christian sense, is not one more object inside the universe. He is no hidden creature before the Big Bang, no cosmic machine part placed at the beginning of a timeline, and no upgraded version of matter. The argument points towards something whose existence is not borrowed, something not assembled from parts, something not dependent on a prior condition, something that does not merely exist, but is the reason anything can exist. That is why the question is so dangerous to shallow atheism. If the atheist says the universe came from earlier physical conditions, we can ask why those conditions existed. If he says the laws of physics explain it, we can ask why there are laws, why they are intelligible, and why they have any power to describe a real order. If he says maybe there are many universes, we can ask why there is any multiverse, any generating structure, any mathematical possibility becoming actual at all. Moving the question backward is not the same as answering it. Imagine a long chain hanging in darkness. You can count link after link after link. You can describe the shape of the metal. You can measure the distance between the links. You can write equations about how the chain moves. But if every link is hanging from another link and no link is ultimately anchored, the chain as a whole is still unexplained. An infinite number of dependent links does not magically become independent. But if you ask why there is a coherent reality at all, why there is an intelligible order rather than no order, why there is a world capable of being studied by minds capable of studying it, the conversation has moved deeper than a laboratory mechanism. Atheism often wins arguments by staying one level too shallow. It answers questions about processes as if those answers remove the question of being itself. But the deeper question remains on the table. Why does anything exist? The question is why there is reality at all. And here atheism usually has three options. The first says reality came from nothing. The second says reality rests on an infinite chain with no foundation. The third says reality is simply a brute fact, meaning it is just there and there is no final explanation. Each option has a cost. To say reality came from nothing is not an explanation, because nothing is not a hidden material waiting to become something. Nothing has no power, no law, no possibility, no field, no energy, no tendency, no door through which being can step. If there is truly nothing, there is nothing to do the explaining. To say the chain goes back forever may sound sophisticated, but it does not remove dependence. A book copied from a book, copied from a book, copied from a book still does not explain where the text came from if every copy only receives what it has. Endless borrowing does not create ownership. And to say the universe is simply a brute fact is where the hidden faith appears. Because a brute fact is not a proof, it is a stopping point. It says, this is where I choose to stop asking. Now notice the emotional power of the word science in this debate. Many people hear God and think of blind belief. Then they hear nature and think the problem has been solved. But nature is not a magic word. Nature is the name we give to the ordered reality we observe. Nature is what needs explaining. If someone says, nature did it, we can ask what nature is, why it exists, why it has stable laws, why mathematics maps onto it, why consciousness can recognize truth inside it, and why moral obligation rises inside human beings as something more serious than appetite. Again, this is not hostility toward science. The Christian view has every reason to expect an ordered world, because the world comes from a rational creator. The surprise is not that science works inside Christianity. The surprise is that atheism borrows so much confidence from a rational order it cannot finally ground. When a scientist writes an equation, he assumes the world is intelligible. When a philosopher makes an argument, he assumes logic is not merely a chemical noise inside his skull. When an atheist says Christianity is false, he assumes truth matters. When anyone says cruelty is wrong, he speaks as if morality reaches beyond private preference. These are not small assumptions. If the deepest reality is blind, purposeless, mindless matter, then reason becomes difficult to honor as a trustworthy guide to truth. Human thinking would be the product of survival pressures, chemistry, and neural events. It might help us live, but why should it reliably deliver ultimate truth? Why should a brain shaped for survival be trusted when it declares the whole meaning of existence? The atheist may answer that reason works because it corresponds to reality, but that is precisely the mystery. Why should mind and reality correspond? Why should the universe be structured in a way that finite minds can understand? Why should mathematical beauty appear again and again inside the physical order? Christianity does not prove every doctrine from that one observation, but it makes sense of the observation. In the beginning was the Word. The world is intelligible because reality is grounded in logos, in divine reason, in a creator who speaks order into being. That is why the Christian does not have to pretend faith is the opposite of reason. Faith is not closing your eyes. Faith is trust in the deepest explanation of why eyes can see, why minds can know, why truth can be loved, and why the world is not a meaningless accident wearing the costume of order. Atheism can say, I do not see enough evidence for God. That is a serious claim, and it deserves a serious answer. But atheism often goes further. It presents disbelief as the default, as if refusing God leaves you standing on neutral ground. It does not. Once you deny God, you still have to stand somewhere. You must still account for being, law, mind, morality, beauty, and the human hunger for meaning. You must still explain why there is a world where explanation works. And if your answer is there is no final answer, that may be your choice, but it is not neutrality. It is a metaphysical commitment. It is faith in the final unintelligibility of reality. This is why the brute fact move is so revealing. The believer says reality is grounded in God, the necessary source of all contingent things. The atheist says reality is grounded in nothing beyond itself, or in a fact with no deeper reason. Both positions reach a mystery. The question is which mystery is more reasonable. The Christian mystery is not that something came from nothing. It is that all things come from the one who is not a thing among things. The atheist mystery is that a universe of extraordinary order, depth, intelligibility, consciousness, moral weight, beauty, and longing simply happens to exist for no ultimate reason. That is not a small difference. Modern atheism often wants the dignity of reason, the force of morality, the wonder of beauty, and the confidence of science, while treating God as unnecessary. But those very goods are easier to understand if reality is not ultimately blind. This does not mean every atheist is secretly immoral or irrational. That would be unfair and false. Many atheists live with courage, kindness, and intellectual seriousness. The point is not about personal character. The point is about foundations. A person can live in a house without knowing the foundation. He can even deny the foundation while enjoying the shelter. But denial does not hold the house up. The argument is asking what holds the house up. And when Christianity says God is creator, it is not inserting a decorative religious answer at the edge of ignorance. It is naming the foundation beneath every answer. Here is where the question becomes personal. Not because the logic disappears, but because logic eventually asks something of the soul. If God is the necessary source of all contingent reality, then the world is not finally mute. Existence is not a cold accident. Reason is not a temporary spark in a meaningless dark. Morality is not just a tribal preference. Beauty is not a trick. Your longing for truth is not a malfunction. The world becomes a sign, not a complete sermon by itself, not a full creed by itself, not every detail of Christian faith by itself, but a sign, pointing beyond itself to a source deep enough to carry the weight of being. That is why John writes, "All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made." That sentence is not trying to compete with physics. It is speaking at a deeper level. All things that are made, all things that receive existence, all things that depend, all things that can be counted among the world, come from the Word. The created order is not self-born, it is gift. And if existence is gift, then humility is the beginning of wisdom. Atheism often sounds brave because it says there is no Father above us, no judge beyond us, no final purpose written into reality. But sometimes what sounds like bravery is only a refusal to be addressed. If God exists, then the universe is not just something you inspect. It is something through which you are being called. That is uncomfortable. It means the question of God is not only intellectual, it is moral. It touches pride, surrender, guilt, gratitude, and worship. It asks whether we want reality to be personal, whether we want truth to have authority, whether we want our lives to be received rather than possessed. This is one reason people resist God, not because they have solved the problem of existence, but because the answer would change everything. So when someone says, "I just do not believe," the question underneath may be more complex. Sometimes disbelief is intellectual, sometimes it is wounded, sometimes it is cultural, sometimes it is moral. Sometimes it is simply inherited from a world that taught people to call faith irrational before they had ever faced the irrationality of existence without God. The Christian response should not be mockery. It should be clarity with patience. Because the deepest Christian claim is not, "You are stupid if you do not see this." The claim is, reality is deeper than the stories we tell ourselves to avoid God. Look again at the world, not as noise, not as a dead machine, not as a closed room. Look at being itself. Look at the fact that there is a universe instead of nothing. Look at the order that makes science possible. Look at the mind that can ask why. Look at the conscience that refuses to treat evil as merely inconvenient. Look at beauty that feels like a message even when you try to reduce it. Then ask which worldview has the wider room. Does atheism truly explain these things, or does it rename them until the wonder fades? Does it answer the question of existence, or does it stop at the edge and call the stop courage? Does it remove faith, or does it ask you to place faith in a final absurdity, a universe that is rational enough to study, meaningful enough to grieve inside, beautiful enough to break your heart, but ultimately grounded in no reason at all? Christianity asks for faith too. It never hides that. But Christian faith is not faith in absurdity. It is faith that the reason there is something rather than nothing is not less than mind, not less than goodness, not less than personal reality, not less than love. It trusts that being is grounded in the living God. And once you see the question clearly, atheism is no longer the automatic default. It is one answer among others, and it carries its own burden. Maybe someone can still choose atheism after that, but he should not call it neutral. He should not call it cost-free. He should not say faith only belongs to believers. Everyone trusts something at the bottom. The Christian trusts that all things come from God, and that the God who gives existence is not distant from the human heart. The atheist trusts that reality needs no final ground beyond itself, or that the ground is unknowable, impersonal, or meaningless. So the real question is not, will you have faith? You already will. The question is whether your faith is placed in a living source or in an unexplained fact that cannot speak, cannot love, cannot command, cannot forgive, and cannot tell you why there is anything here at all. And that is the one thing atheism must believe. It must believe the world is finally here without a giver. Christianity looks at the same world and says something more beautiful, more demanding, and more reasonable. There is a giver, and every breath is already evidence that you have received,